Hey guys, Valky here. Today we just got the drop for the Overlord side story, and I wanted to make a all-encompassing, informative video on everything you could possibly want to know about the Overlord Collaboration side story, be it you're a veteran or a new player. You can skip to the part that you think are useful to you. Let's get right into it. I want to first talk about the units, and I'll be showcasing the stats sporadically in the video where they're relevant. But if you'd like to see the full stats, more notes on the units, feel free to check out the stats catalog to all of my PvP units in the Discord server. Starting out with Ainz. Ainz is a debuff and support type mage that is very in character with what he does in Overlord. In Epic 7, his role is very much the same, where he provides barriers for his allies and debuffs his enemy through stunts while buying time for his ultimate. The goal of all life is death, which inflicts the death sentence debuff, dealing an instant kill worth of damage after 12 turns taken by all units on the board. He's a necessity in the side story, which is cool, and I think he's actually alright in Guild Wars, but RTA PvP is a different question. I think the issue with playing him RTA is as follows. Even with high effectiveness, his death sentence can be resisted, and thus 15% absolute resisted, and we all know how bad that is. This means 1 out of every 6 games, he's just going to lose his ultimate for free because he got the debuff resisted. And if you're hitting through immunity, the buff strip versus that immunity can also be resisted. So 85% chance into 85% chance means roughly you're missing 1 out of every 4 casts on this ultimate versus immunity units. You don't want that. He also takes too much damage from light units. Even an Aiden in the attack buff is going to be able to one-tap him, and that's a free 3-star unit, and she'll blow him absolutely right up. Third problem is he can be very easily crowd controlled. He's not very fast. Even with a respectable amount of ER, he can just be stunned. And lastly, even if you do death sentence something, his target can just be revived, and revive units are somewhat common in the metagame right now. As such, I can't really recommend my usual guys to just go play him in RTA. But if you like playing gimmicky builds and you like catching people off guard, I actually think he's pretty fun. I've seen a few guys pop off with him on Twitch, but that's not really what I'm about. I like climbing, and I like climbing ranks. And if that's you as well, there are much easier ways to climb ranks. Like, why would you spend 12 turns to deal 50,000 damage when you can just spend 1 turn to deal 50,000 damage split across every unit on your opponent's team? But if you do end up trying him in RTA, I would recommend a build exactly like mine, maybe on Tagahel's Ancient Book instead of his own artifact. I just have this for the side story. And for Guild War, I recommend cutting all effect resistance for effectiveness. Regardless, if you're new and just plan on playing him for the side story or you just like him, just put 6 pieces of gear on him, especially HP set that'll keep him alive through the side story and it'll get the job done. Next up is Albedo. I think she's the most underrated unit of the collab, mostly because her kit isn't particularly flashy like Ainz or Shalltear, where they do a lot of damage with 1 cool animation. Instead, she's a almost pure tank with a little bit of bruiser hybrid to her, with an overwhelming amount of defensive utility. Now, what I mean by that is that she's slightly more aggressive than her Overlord version of her being in the story, where she's the main tank of the Tomb of Nazarick. She's all defense. So if you need a mental image of what she does there, she's basically Crimson Armin but on crack. I'm kind of glad she's not a lore accurate version of who she is, because our metagame right now is a little bit slow, so I don't mind not getting the lore accurate version of her. In Epic 7, she's a bit more aggressive, where her job is to mitigate damage through her passive and boost the comeback potential of turn 2 compositions by stripping buffs and applying small amounts of damage here and there. As such, I would say she's good versus units under 10,000 HP and crit-based team compositions, which points her to being good versus cleaves. Specifically the Ran and Ludwig cleaves. But on the other hand, I think 1, she's bad versus injury, and she's kind of not great versus bulky, non-crit based DPS such as Death Dealer Ray, Urban Shadow Shu, and Bihu, just to name a few. So if you ever want to play her as the main tank, I would just swap her own artifact out for Aureus, and I would say that's especially good if you don't have a counterattack build like I have. You can just run her on a speed set. Just make her slightly faster than most of your DPS units to strip the enemy's buffs and set up a defense break for your DPS. And of course, protection set builds will always offer the most amount of safety. Either way, if your main focus is the side story, any 6 pieces of gear with the right main stats and substats will do. Her connection for the side story is what really makes her good there, and I'll explain it once we get to that section. Shalltear is the last unit, and she'll come out 5 days from when this video is released, and is generally the consensus no-brainer OP unit. If you look at her passive, just the stealth alone is enough to make her a relevant unit, but mix that in with the damage limit, self-attack buff, and the sustain and healing she'll get from her own artifact, and you have a recipe for one OP DPS unit. In Overlord, her ultimate is known to be able to penetrate every type of magical defense, as well as having the magic to guide it to never miss a hit. So that is being brought 100% to light, and I'm glad that's being kept as her kit. It's very in flavor. The only worry I have for her is I'm not sure she has the best matchups versus the best DPS units in the metagame right now, like these guys over here. But if you're a new player, definitely make sure you pick her up, since having not only 1 but 2 defensive utilities in her passive is how you know a character will have serious staying power in the PvP metagame. And when I say PvP, guys, just know that I mean specifically RTA, as that's the only place you'll be playing against real human opponents. Since Guild War and Arena, you'll just be playing versus AI piloted defense teams. And that's the overview for the units we got for this collaboration. We get Ainz for free, and that's fairly cool. As far as free units from collabs go, top of the top in terms of coolness. Albedo has great defensive utilities, and it's quite flexible in terms of whether you want her to be a damage dealer or a tank, while Shalltear is looking like the best DPS unit most new players will get for a long time. Now, as opposed to why you should do this side story, this is one of those events where you absolutely do not want to miss. The reason why I say this is because the last time we had an event like this during the summer that lets you farm gear, and I don't just mean any gear, I mean guaranteed red epic gear from the side story, it ended up being one of the places where people got the most upgrades and caught up to end game players the fastest. Let me explain. If you're new to Epic 7, I would say the gear and unit economy most closely resembles that of a competitive card game. Think Hearthstone, Shadowverse, Yu-Gi-Oh, or Magic the Gathering. Yes, spending money on the game grants an advantage to the spenders, but that is an advantage people can catch up to. And you can only get so many playable copies of a card, or you can only get so many imprints of a hero, or get gear of this quality before there's just no higher number you can reach for. Or at the very least, when it comes to gear, there is a cap to how strong gear can get. And this side story matters because math-wise, it's just too good economically for your account, for any account. Now, normally when you craft, it costs you gold, and you're not guaranteed high quality red epic gear, which means free-to-play players have to choose between crafting gear or using the shop refresh to look for bookmarks, which is to use to summon new units, since they both cost gold, and you're only getting limited gold income. But this side story lets you craft guaranteed red gear, and not only does it not cost gold, you're also earning stigma on the side, letting you exchange them for penguins and selling them for gold, which is, and not only that, it's a huge amount, which feeds back into your shop refreshes and the rest of your resources, and is an insane way of letting free-to-play players and low-spending players, if you're just a monthly pack player, or like me, a Burning Passion pack player, catch up on those that are already deep in the end game. The act of doing the side story is actually fairly simple. Just initiate the story and go through the first 5 acts that we have unlocked so far. At the end of Act 5, pick up the copy of Ainz you get for free, and pair that with the artifact you got from Act 4. Then you're ready to party. If you're new to Epic 7, artifacts are basically, if you're a Genshin player, they're your weapons. If you're a Honkai player, they're your light cones. And if you're an FGO player, your craft essences, okay? The other ingredient you're going to need is an Albedo, the other premium character, so you're gonna have to go summon her. And if you're new, I recommend progressing through the story to pick up Sky Stones and doing whatever content available that can give you either Sky Stones or Covenant bookmarks until you get 1 Albedo, and preferably also 1 3F. But that's just a bonus. Next step is to put up their respective artifacts and 6 of pieces of gear on the heroes. Don't worry about stats too much, since your units will be boosted to max level, full awakening, and full skill ups, and get bonus stats for the side story only. Try to match my main stats on my right side gear and just let them tank and survive. Speaking of being tanky, that's all you need for the side story, since the boss is going to be immune to most of your damage while the ads are up. Even on my endgame account, most of the damage are going to be coming through Ainz' Death Sentence, which is a fixed damage. Albedo's connection bonus here will spread the Death Sentence to the ads, which in return feeds more extra damage into the boss. So all you need to worry about is keeping your units alive through your first couple of clears until you can get some upgrades. Besides Albedo and Ainz, you'll need 2 more members to fill out this team for the side story. Now, if you're an endgame player like myself, the team doesn't really matter since you'll be gear gapping even the highest difficulty of this week. This entire guide is more so for the newer players. But if you need units to use, I would say use anything with good anti-AoE counterattacks. A bonus if they gain combat readiness like Navy Captain Landy, ML Bologna, Seaside Bologna, Bissell Ufine, and Fire Shuri are all pretty good. And they can all work since having good gear means you can use that gear to push for extra damage, potentially ending the fight earlier, maximizing the amount of runs you can get in this 3-week event window. Now, if you're a new player, try to support your Overlord units with healers and bonus points if they boost combat readiness and give speed buff. The ones I found to be the most helpful are Greenlots, Specialty Change Ainos, Tamarin, Sinful Angelica, honestly anything that has a heal built in, and just put Idol's Cheer on them to give our Ainz more combat readiness. Since it's always Albedo and Ainz together, the last 2 units, General Purgus and Ainos, is one of the fastest cycling teams. They just generate so much speed and combat readiness. There is really not that many other teams you can do that's faster than them. Fire Shuri, however, do end up being one of those units that can match the speed. Another composition that I've seen is really fun is Camilla plus Benimaru's Tachi and just any PvP Abyssal Ufine. The reason it's so fast is Camilla with a Tachi has no animation, lands defense break, and a Ufine with higher attack than your Ainz gets her S3 up so fast it syncs up with Camilla's defense break and pushes for a massive amount of damage. Those are the composition I experimented with day 1. Shoutouts to my boy Rikazo for that last one. Highly recommend checking him out, but also subscribe to Tristan Wolf, who I'm sure over the course of the next 3 weeks will come up with a highly optimized, low budget, high speed composition since he is E7 Community's designated PvE guy. Once you get a few hundred detailed instructions, head on over to Overlord's Force. Here you can use the currency you have on hand to unlock memory imprints for Ainz, which will lower the difficulty of the side story, as well as limit breaks for your staff of Ainz Ogon, which increases your drop rate for the currency. Buy these out until your S imprint on your Ainz, which should lead you to the maximum bonus you can get for week 1. After that, just farm as usual and continue leveling him up and level up his memory imprint when next week comes around. Now, once you cleared up your shop, you can start working on the Orbis treasure. The left side is where you'll get your usual drops, and I start by buying it out. Most of these material go towards either powering up your units or getting you more gear. Once you clear that out, the fun starts. You can start crafting gear on the right side. You can choose the set to craft here, and the gear will always be the highest quality starting with 4 substats. Basically the best gear you can get in the entire game. I would recommend everybody farming this portion as hard as you can considering how gold and energy efficient it is to get the gear here, and it's only here for 3 weeks, so go crazy. Week 1 will have you be able to craft Destruction set for your DPS units, HP set for your tanks and supports, while Immunity set is just helpful in PvP all around. If you're a veteran player, this event should let you go hugely gold positive, which should enable even free-to-play players to be able to shop refresh for bookmarks on the reg. If you're brand new, just do the highest difficulty that you can survive and craft HP set gear for your Ainz and Albedo. Enhance the good pieces as high as you can go just to survive on the highest difficulty that you can survive in. Then farm this event as much as you can. After this event goes away, you can just play the game normally. Alright guys, and that's the entirety to the week 1 guide to the Overlord Collaboration side story. Hope it was able to get some of you guys off the ground and get your gear game going. Let me know below if you guys want me to make a specific gear crafting guide for this event, like what gear to look for and similar stuff like that. I know veteran players definitely don't need that, but if you're really new and that's something you're struggling with, let me know. I'll try to make the time for it. Otherwise, feel free to share if you guys found a faster composition compared to what I'm suggesting or what Tristan Wolf found. Either way, this is one of those top tier events you do not want to be missing, and it's a perfect time to start the game and start catching up to a lot of these endgame players. If you're a returning player, and especially if you're one of those slackers that ended up not using a lot of your leaves, like my friend here, this is your time to shine. with that being said, that's all I got for y'all in this video. I hope it was helpful. As always, you can help me back by subscribing, liking, and commenting on the video. If you have any further questions, the questions and advice chat in the Discord is always a good destination. And of course, stay safe out there. See ya.